Okay, greetings everybody. Welcome to Lunar Alchemy. This particular session, we are going to be looking at Gene Key 33 and the archetype of the medicine woman. So I'm very excited to be exploring this particular energy band that takes us from the shadow of forgetting to the city of revelation. And our gift is that of mindfulness. Today, we're going to be exploring the meaning of the elements of heaven over mountain and how this relates to our individual and collective experience on our evolutionary path. The I Ching's original title is Of Retreat, and we're going to be exploring the role of memory in all of this. So very excited to be here with you, Bella. For those of you who haven't met me, my name is John. Very happy to see you all joining us for our discussion. So, Bella, drop us into where we are. We've been coming through all of these transits and we've jumped through the other stop codons, and here we are at the 33. So what are you seeing and what's happening here?
I do feel like this is a leadership energy, definitely, the medicine woman, and that she knows when to be in the circle and expressing that leadership, and also when to retreat and integrate. And I feel it's also interesting that she is very balanced between, I feel like, yin and yang, because she has that element of the mountain, which feels like the very groundedness into the form, and then the first trigram, or the heaven trigram, which is the masculine, the creative. So between yin and yang, it feels that's the strength of the medicine somehow, or that's the power of the medicine, to have that balance inside of her. And I do feel that people with a 33, once they remember who they are, when they stop forgetting who they were all along, that's when the power comes out. It's very uncomfortable and sad to see the 33 expressing in the world and giving a medicine from a place where there is no awareness of the true self, of the essence. And I feel that is the biggest challenge for this gene key, but for all of us in a way. We are in a period of remembering, and we can try so hard to do everything right, but if it's from a place of not even remembering the point of departure and the essence of who we are, then still it's going to be corrupt. It's still going to be fragmented. So we can do so much, but somehow I feel like the coming in the stillness first before we creatively express seems very important here. So we can speak also about, where are the elements and why in that order. That feels interesting.
Yeah. So what's this is bringing up to me is the tendency of the ego to kind of want to take action as memories are recovered. And in this remembering process that we're going through, we may begin to recover some of the memories of our greater self lineage, as we might talk about it, whether that's from beyond our own genetic lineage to something somewhat more spiritual in nature. Our egos tend to want to grasp onto this memory and generate a new personality through the availability of this memory as it's come to us, and reinvent oneself in the world so that there's a reflection of that ego's presence, essentially saying to the world, I exist. But when I think about the role of this archetype, the existence of each individual and as the collective is already, that is part of the awareness in which that leadership container is set. And so there's no actual need for this movement of the ego when we begin to recover memories, rather than moving and creating something new, using that spark of the memory to reform who it is we believe we are. The medicine woman relaxes into stillness, the stillness of the mountain. And it's a really unique form of energy that is, I believe, challenging for our collective society of progress that is focused on progress to really fully understand, because the style of leadership is so very different from the forms that we're accustomed to and that are very, very active in our awareness. So let's talk about memory, Bella. Since this archetype is facing the shadow of forgetting, and it's embracing this gift of mindfulness, or approaching with the gift of mindfulness and moving toward embodying revelation. How does this archetype relate to memory and the nature of the fact that there are so many memories which are hidden from us? So I would love to explore that a little bit, because I feel like there's a lot of juiciness in there with this medicine woman.
Yeah, from a human design perspective, we are in the collective circuitry and we are in the sensing circuit. So here we have a lot of experiences that might not make sense in the moment, but they are accumulated. We're sensing our way through them. And then after they make sense, and they kind of create this big akasha, you could say, of wisdom. And in the 3313 that connects the G to the throat, we have the memory bank, we could say, of everything that's ever been said and everything that hasn't been said, but we're there between the lines. And here in the 33, in a way, we have kind of, it's a throat gate. So it's a kind of, it's not a motor, but it's a manifestation of experience. And it's very fast. It's a lot of experiences. And people that have the 33, they have a lot of things that they've been through usually. And then on the other side, the 13 is listening to all that and remembering. But when we have a channel, two harmonic gates coming together, the whole process is always part of them coming together. So whether you have half of it or the whole of it, it has that function. So to relate this to what you said, John, I feel that the first step is the awareness of that we are carrying in our blueprint. We're carrying the collective memories, not only our own, of course, but also the collective ones. Yeah, that's where I would start, at least.
Yeah, it feels like this idea of, some of the gene keys directly explore this theme of reincarnation, and what does it really mean? How does it really function from a collective consciousness of humanity into an individuation? And when we look at the role of this concept of karma, and as Richard Rudd describes, the sanskaras, that are essentially memory fragments that set in motion certain events that we are to play out through our current vehicles. It feels to me very challenging to separate one's sense of self from this possibility that the recovering of memory isn't a search for our own individual self. It's a recovering of a collective self that through this embodied form, we have very, very little experience of from a sense of our direct awareness. I do believe that as we grow in the womb, we have that sense of collective experience through the connection with our mother. And that may be one of the initial sort of physical experiences that we have in connection with the collective. And when we think about recovering the memories of our soul memories or whatever it is, oftentimes it feels as if we want to relate those soul memories to the purpose of our individual being, as if our individual being is not a fragment of some greater thing, but that the greater thing was funneled into this small version that we're to become the totality of. And I think in the process of remembering, it can be very easy to personalize any of those types of collective memories to our own direct experience and say, I am this, or I am that. I went through this horrid experience or that awful, time in history or whatever. And I'm wondering how it is that you see the medicine woman being capable of essentially being in this individuated form, at least in an individuated form of an archetype, while still having room for that collective space where that need to say, I exist, and have that reflected to us it has kind of like been relaxed. I'm sort of wondering how you see that and functioning through us, and what that might look like in either our mechanics or our evolution.
Yeah, I feel that in modern times, the medicine woman is maybe a space holder. And I feel that in the new age, kind of the new age world, where it's come to those spaces where we meet and where we have the intention to evolve together, it's a space holding. So when you are a medicine man or a medicine woman, it's about holding, it's about the space holding. And I feel like that is in a way making us, it doesn't make the skin so thick. It kind of makes us as part of that field. And that doesn't take away from our uniqueness, but like you say, in that moment of the space holding, that is in a way where what we are tapping into, and what I believe the medicine woman is able to do. And that's why the circle is safe, because she becomes the whole circle without oppressing. Like it's that kind of really what I see. And I can see a similar thing with the 13. It's in a way of, this 13 is more like a filter, and I guess the 33 then feels like the holding of it. The space holding is what comes up for me.
Yeah, I love that you bring it up in that particular way, because and that you just brought up 13. I mean, it's so we just go in the same directions, because I was like, so let's talk about empathy, because if you become a space holder, what does that truly mean about how we experience empathy today? Which is like, oh, I feel everybody else's emotions, which, that does occur, but that doesn't really relate to the city of empathy in Gene Key 13. But how would we change as individuals when we come across another person who is clearly going through an experience of suffering, where they are either trapped or unaware of being stuck within a shadow frequency, which oftentimes comes out in the most unpleasant of ways for other people to experience. So whether they're in a reactive state or a repressive state, how do we embody this medicine woman? And what does that do if we begin to imagine that the experience of the person who's in front of us is serving to trigger within us the memory of that same suffering from the collective that is just happens to be currently active through the person in front of us? And how does that change, like, how we think about empathy? How do we learn about saying, oh, that person is, using judgment to essentially say that person is behaving in an inappropriate way, or is expressing themselves in a way that is harmful to other people? And how does that change our kind of awareness of people who are in that state? And how would we operate differently?
I feel like this comes back to space more than anything. I don't think that empathy really comes from an awareness. That actually comes from how much space do you have in your vessel, in your field. And when you have space, there is space for empathy. We all know that if you're super stressed, how are you going to think about somebody else? We lose our empathy when we are stressed. And this is in a way, this is the loop of the 33. When you're out there having too many experiences, too many things to deal with, and too much stress, then you can't have empathy. And that's why we need the retreat, because in the retreat, we create space, not only by kind of going out of the space, but also we create the space inside, because we are able to go to those places where medicine works. And a lot of it, I feel, is that we are purifying cell memories that don't serve. We're purifying collective cell memories in our own, in this lifetime, memories that don't serve. And then there is more space in our inner vessel. And the more our inner vessel is like that, the more then the circle, the space holding is also a circle where empathy is like the perfume or something, like it's there all the time. It's not something that we have to focus on, because in that space, it's there.
This is such a beautiful answer, because I'd like to just share about how what you just shared is so very different from our general way of approaching these types of situations. Today, there is a very, very deep focus on the establishment and maintenance of strong boundaries, which is essentially says, I'm not willing to move, but I'm also gonna keep you out of my space. And here, what you just said was essentially that rather than having to do that, we have an opportunity with the medicine woman to retreat, to create space through retreating. And if we're able to embrace that, then the threat that we use the boundaries to keep out of our space, it becomes less threatening, because we've put enough space for us to go through our own process of integration of, okay, what happened in this experience? What were the emotions that I felt? Can I ride the emotional waves, or do I need to discern through the emotions that were programmed into my body by another person, depending on our design? And this type of this concept of being able to retreat gives us so much more space to allow for a more more integrative approach. And it feels like you're saying that with that space, there's definitely a space where, as you say, empathy can become more of a perfume rather than a source of conflict that we experience in relating with other people when there are challenging emotions present. And yeah, I see that there's a lot of discussion happening, and I'm happy to see that. And I want to encourage everybody to continue sharing your thoughts and responses to the things that we say. These ideas about boundaries, I wasn't necessarily suggesting that it's the only way to go about it, or that it's I wasn't attempting to share something that is proper or improper. Boundaries always have their places. But what I'm noticing is that, yeah, thank you, Bella, the dilemma of the seven, right? Which is my vocation. So simply the contrast between this idea of creating safety through boundaries versus creating safety through retreat. That's all I'm trying to bring awareness to. And the fact that we can be mindful of these two different opportunities rather than only feeling that we have one way or another, which to me, the reactive and repressive natures can be seen within these varying responses of if we are stuck only retreating every time, then we're stuck in one of these shadow processes. If we're stuck only setting boundaries where we can react to people, we're stuck in this sort of shadow frequency of experience. But if we open it up, there's more space available for us to truly choose, rather than being the victims of whatever events happen around us and not being able to respond in a way that works. So hopefully that's a little bit clearer. Bella, what are your thoughts from here?
I will go back to the sensing circuit and the sense making, and I actually pulled it up, so I'm going to show you.
Yeah, let's look at that, because I feel hazy
Yeah.
when I think about that.
I feel it goes back again to the space. You know, in order to be able to make an evaluation that is true or correct, we need to have enough space, enough time, enough retreat, enough integration, possibly, which is what the 33 says. And I didn't remember that in integral human design, the gift frequency is evaluation. And actually, it's called the channel of evaluation. I didn't remember that. I feel that it is important to see that in the whole circuitry, which is called the stream of fulfillment here, which is the sensing circuit in normal human design or traditional human design, we need to go through the experience in the 4629. It says yes to the experience, whatever is going to happen. You know, you have the water goddess or the 29 as your life's work, John. And then I've been very, very, very touched, but not touched in an emotional way, but I feel like touched on my skin really by the 35 and the 36 lately, because Ashley has the 36, her husband has the 35, so a lot of through her. Then we were working with somebody who has 35 and 36 in the chart really powerfully, and I just feel in so many ways the 35 and the 36 has come there, and it looks like transistoriness. It looks like hunger and like eating and friction and all this. And then actually at the end of the day, if we have enough space, we can make sense of it. We can evaluate it for what it is. So that felt like one thing that is going together with what we said. And then omnipresence. Isn't that exactly a very good, if we with one word want to explain or understand the space holder that is both in of course in a unique vessel, but also has that omnipresence that that is everywhere and kind of evaluates and hears everything that's there in the circle with everybody. So and then at the end of the day, when we make sense of all these things that are happening, good or bad, in the sensing circuitry, it is fulfillment, because there is a richness to it. There is something that serves us as we are walking forward. The memory bank serves for something, and it is for our fulfillment. And that's what we see in this abstract circuitry, where it can't make sense while, but there is a pattern that we can see that's being fulfilled, and that we understand after the experience.
Yeah, I love where this is all like coming together to, and it just feels that if we really look at memory from the perspective of consciousness, like, what is the purpose of memory? How does it function as an aspect of evolution? And when we talk about this theory of evolution in nature, we talk about how over generations upon generations, the animals, for instance, they develop memories which essentially program their DNA into certain behavior forms and behavior types. Whether or not that's, if that's through natural selection, so be it, because the ones that didn't have a certain behavior didn't survive long enough to reproduce. Okay, but if we look at it from a larger standpoint, how does this relate to human beings? Are we at a point where we're no longer, long ago, we went beyond the point of being able to reproduce regardless of the role of the memories that we have. Now it's like we're in this state of, traumas get passed on from generation to generation. And this is kind of one of those things that is hard for us to integrate and say, there's wisdom in trauma, and to experience that these generational patterns of racism, of sexism, of all of these things that are present in the sort of shadow side of our societies. There is wisdom available within those if we have the space to allow for the integration of the memory fully, with that archetype of the medicine woman kind of leading the way. And it feels to me as if this archetype of the medicine woman can give us a completely different perspective about this concept of evil in the world, the concept that there are people who are behaving in detrimental ways to society, the divisions that are being created in our society, where people have one set of beliefs that is in conflict with another set of beliefs. And it feels to me as if this archetype of the medicine woman allows for the totality of these memories to be acknowledged, the space to have that perfume of empathy come in, and some understanding, and the presence to bring the inner truth that comes through our individual mechanisms to be able to contribute to the collective. Oftentimes I feel like as individuals, when we're like, oh, I'm gonna do my soul mission, and I'm gonna I'm gonna contribute my individual contribution to the collective. We think about the collective in terms of all of the people who think the way we think about humanity and spirituality and all of that. And there's not always as much space for those people who behave, act, believe, and stand for things which are in direct opposition to the things that we are standing up for. And it's like, how do we bridge this gap when in our society? And it feels to me as if this possibility of retreat and creating space, finding space within our own selves, is such a powerful way that we can move forward in this world that is kind of like going further and further to the extremes, one side against the other. No matter what perspective you look at that from, whether it's the people versus the controlling governments, or sectors of the economy, or political belief structures, or the people who are making the laws for our countries, or one country invading another country. How can we generate inside our own selves enough space to allow for the recognition and the presence with all of the memories that are setting these events and these activities in motion? This feels like a tremendous opportunity for a massive awakening throughout humanity that I haven't witnessed before on the planet, at least in large collectives. And I sort of wonder, it makes me very curious to wonder what that would actually look like if all of a sudden humanity just kind of went poof and we all had this medicine woman archetype like full on inside ourselves. What would a circle look like of people who have these extremely different beliefs and ideas? And how can we begin to step in that direction? So Bella, I'd love to look at the elements if you want to bring that up.
Attaining the insight of heaven through the stillness of the body and mind. So I love that geometry, definitely. And
it's really amazing. The sun sets behind the mountain. Like when I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, I never even thought of the sun being part of the heavens. Of course it is. Genius.
Yeah, and I guess it is from that place that we anchor. We are anchoring the stillness of the body and the mind, and that's how the insights are coming. And it feels that's where the remembrance can come. And somehow I feel like, to what you were saying, when we remember our true essence, that's when the world is coming back into equilibrium. And it's really not about, we have so many different ways of seeing things and thinking about things, because it's beyond all that. So I feel that it wouldn't be at that frequency, it wouldn't be a conflict. It would more be a canvas or a uniqueness of different colors weaving together.
Yeah, absolutely. The looking at these two hexagrams together and considering how do these elements function inside of us with this concept. We have a deep history of particularly amongst religions, of revelation, of stories of revelation. And in many cases, it is going up on the mountain to receive the inspiration from the heavens. And when we look at these qualities of these two elements, the heavens are up in the air and the mountain grows up from the earth. So as we look at air and earth kind of meeting in this way, in the I Ching, it talks about this mountain rising up from the earth, and the heavens kind of retreat away from that rising. That's kind of where this concept comes from. But I love this I forget what we call it in the middle here, the combination of the hexagrams. Bella, would you like to share a little bit about that? I always love how you
the braid.
Yes.
Right. So if you know your gene keys, you know that stress, restraint, and stillness, that's gene key 52. So it's part of the mountain, or it's two times the mountain over mountain, the 52, stress, restraint, and stillness. And then entropy, freshness, and beauty, that is gene key 1. So heaven over heaven is gene key 1. So when you have mountain and heaven, or when you have gene key 52 and 1, you're actually creating the 33. And here we would just have the frequency bands. So forgetting is the entropy of stress. Yes, I can feel that. Mindfulness is the freshness of restraint. Revelation is the beauty of stillness.
Yeah, the braid is always so powerful, and especially when we carry it from the awareness of the shadow to however we relate to the city, just the words, when we think about stress and how that is, in some ways, it's such a function of our biology. But when we combine stress with entropy, it leads to our forgetting. And when we consider this idea that the veil of forgetting is part of our experience of incarnation, of coming into a body, we forget our experience in the womb. We forget our experience, in the early moments of our life. We forget the wisdom that is carried within our genetic makeup, that comes from experiences that are beyond our direct experience. And to feel that as a manifestation of stress is very, very illuminating, because it allows us to then begin to understand what does it mean to have the freshness of restraint? What does it mean to move into mindfulness? And then what is revelation really? The beauty of stillness, and all of those different ways of expressing this energy give us a clue about how we can feel it, how we can experience it, how we can create it through our own bodies, and allow for the movement that is going to come through our genes as we go through that process, so that we can continue with our own specific individual pathway. It's just really, really such a beautiful archetype to invite into contemplation, into the experience of exploring your own self, and how you can discover and actually put into action your contribution to the people that you care about, to the collective, to any level that you are focusing on. So, Bella, any last sort of reflections that you'd like to bring up and share from this discussion, or this energy that we haven't covered or that's on your mind?
I just put in the chat the 26, which is mountain over heaven. So there is something with the geometry and just kind of having enough space, I guess, to sit with the geometry and see what is it when I put this trigram over this trigram. How does it? What is the invert, like the reversed or the inverted? But I do feel a little bit of that retreat feeling, which is good. I guess it's the second line, or we're going into the third line now. But that the second line is a natural, so just naturally having that. I wonder, maybe because of my individual circuitry, but somehow knowing feels like a word here. I know that mindfulness is the word, but I think sometimes I'm a little bit allergic, mindfulness or contemplation, and I feel like this is just a inner knowing, inner remembering in this gene key. And somehow the conversation today also makes me feel to not become an enemy of our own cellular imprints. You know, I felt like when you were bringing up memory, I know that's the dilemma. I believe that's the dilemma for this key. At least it is a dilemma, because sometimes we wish that wouldn't have happened to us, or that wouldn't have happened in to our ancestors. And then at the end of the day, I feel like the richness of it as well, and that the space holding really, really comes from all the journeys that you had, all the experiences, and in all kind of ceremonial spaces, you can feel the elders, whether they are old in years or not. You can feel the elders that are able to hold the integrity of the circle for the transmission to come through.
Yeah, and I feel like what you just described is such a good, it really brings together this codon ring of trials, you know, in this idea of holding space, and how that leads to the richness or the enrichment from the 56 of the wisdom that comes from those memories. One of the things that most greatly interferes with our capability of creating space is when we carry memory that is not yet whose wisdom is not yet integrated into our system. Just like you said, memories of things that we wish hadn't happened. As we do not experience the enrichment from that memory or the integration of it, then it makes smaller the amount of space that we can hold. And as we integrate each memory and the wisdom from those memories, no matter what the memory is of, then it increases our capacity to create space, to hold space. And within that space, then can manifest the purity of the heart of the 12. And it's like all of these three stop codons working together in this like synergistic way. It's really, really pretty fantastic if you look at them as the first, second, and the third, as Richard Rudd type sort of suggests. Here we are at the beginning, like we've forgotten in our memories. And then if we bring the enrichment of those memories, it creates all of the space through which the purity of the heart can manifest. And it's just really, really a fantastic, fantastic way to understand some of these gene keys. And so Bella, thank you for describing that in such a clear way as sort of like an organic experience. So we are going to begin our transmission, which is essentially going to be about what I just discussed. When we look at the elements air over earth, we could see from the image that we had just looked at that the sun is also a portion of that. So there is an aspect of fiery metabolism that is involved in this process of transmuting memories into wisdom that we can hold in a great space. And so that's what we're going to be focusing on in the transmission. So for everyone who has been here, thank you so much for contributing such a lively discussion today. This was such an unexpected pathway for this discussion for me. I really, really enjoyed all of the different parts that we touched on and all of the contributions that you all offered were really fantastic. So I really appreciate your presence here and in exploring these ideas in this wonderful space. I feel like, you know, as I think Jennifer, you mentioned, we are doing this process right here, right now, of creating that space for the medicine woman to come in. And so thank you all for being here. And we'll look forward to seeing you in the future. I believe next week we will have to reschedule our discussion, and that date will be pending. So thank you for all being here, and we will see you very, very soon. Bye for now.